To start, I live in Newfoundland, which is pretty rural wherever you go, so you don't have to go far outside of town to go camping. My family owns 100 acres on the beach about an hour outside of town and upward from the beach until you get to the highway, which my great-grandparents were given when they relocated from an island across the bay from our cabins. It's 90 acres of dense forest and bog, with a single dirt road cutting through the middle until you make it to the beach, and then there's about 10 acres of open field along the beach. The way our cabins are situated, they all line the edge of the forest in a horseshoe. There are 11 of them, with the boathouses down on the water and a clear field in between. Up past the last cabin, there are a few outhouses for when the well dries up, which doesn't happen all the time, but the last couple years we've had some pretty global warmed summers, so the well's been drying up around August. All my great-aunts and uncles own the other 10 cabins, so there's usually a bunch of people down there on any given night, but they're getting up in their age, so they're not as active as they used to be. This particular weekend, my parents, my brother, and I, along with my great-uncle Norm's son and his kids, were the only people down there until Saturday night when they had to go back into town for a hockey camp. Usually, there would be enough people to have a bonfire on the beach every night, but because it was only our family down there, we decided to have a small one in the fire pit next to our cabin instead. Probably around 11, my mom gets up to go to the outhouse, which I refuse to use because there are a ton of spiders in there, and last time I was in there, I had one crawling on my balls. A couple minutes later, my mom comes back down to where we're sitting, which is pretty odd, because it takes more than a minute to walk to the outhouse. So, I jokingly said it must have been the quickest shit of her life, but she didn't respond. When she gets closer to the fire, I saw the look of utter terror on her face. She was white as a sheet. I asked her if a spider fell on her when she was in the outhouse, but she said she didn't get a chance to do anything in the outhouse, and she started to cry. I was like, geez, you shit your pants? That's gross, but you don't have to cry about it, until she cut me off and told me to shut the fuck up, which is weird shit, because she never swore at me like that before. So my dad asks her what the problem is, and she tells us what happened when she walked up through the field. She had on one of those clip-on lights for a baseball hat, which are pretty much the worst flashlight in existence, and she told me when she was walking up past the dirt road, she heard something rustling in the bush just off the dirt road. When she went to shine her light on it, the light didn't reach far enough for her to see what it was, but it looked to be at least 4 foot tall, and it ran when the light was pointed at it. So she assumed it was a young caribou, because if it was a bear or a moose, they wouldn't be that fast, and she would have caught a better glimpse of it. So she keeps on walking up past the dirt road, about 50 feet to where the 4 outhouses are, and she went into the closest stall to do her business. While she's getting ready to shit, she heard a metallic scraping sound coming from the woods. It was faint at first, but it started to get louder and louder. There's a derelict car about 30 feet off the road that one of my uncles crashed 30 years earlier, and she assumed it was coming from there. But she had no idea what the fuck could be making the noise. So she was starting to get pretty scared. She pulled up her pants, opened up the outhouse, and just fucking booked it as fast as she could until she was close enough to the cabin and looked back over the field, but she didn't see anything. So she speed-walked up to the fire. Never run near a fire, kids. And that's when we saw her return. We all had a bit of a laugh at her, actually. We told her it was probably a tree scraping up against the old car, and she was over-exaggerating. But she insisted she wasn't, and told my dad she wanted to go to our cabin. And we were all getting pretty tired of just sitting around the campfire, so we all decided to go into the cabin and go to bed. My mom and dad went into their room, but me and my brother stayed up a little longer playing Pokemon until we fell asleep. After he fell asleep, I walked out into the dark living room and stumbled my way to the bathroom. I was facing the window when I entered the bathroom, and I could see something flickering in the bushes about 20 feet away from the window. so I quickly turned on the light, and for a few seconds, the largest fucking canine face was just staring at me, probably around 5 foot off the ground, with bright red eyes, and it just bared its huge fangs at me and darted off into the woods. Needless to say, I sure as fuck didn't sleep that night. Recently, I asked my uncle how he crashed the car 30 years ago, and he told me he was driving down the dirt road one night after a late shift at the mill when a wolf ran out into the road, and he swerved into the brush to avoid hitting it. The car was still in working condition, but it was stuck in the boggy ground and not worth getting it towed out. Worst part of the story? We don't have wolves in Newfoundland.